Hello!
Hello.
Hello.
How's everyone doing tonight?
I
Better now that I
exist.
can see you.
Aww. So, that's not the right thing. Yeah. Okay, there we go. So, in tonight's episode of Lore Masters, we're diving into the way of the warrior. We're going to be taking a look at the barbarian, the fighter, and the paladin. And with us we have Catherine, whose favorite class is barbarian, and our fresh newbie barbarian, Evan.
Yeah, why you gotta downgrade me like that? Come on, newbie.
I mean,
You are new.
kind of what the show's for.
Baby.
You're not wrong.
Okay, so through tonight's episode, we'll be taking any questions in chat. We have a bunch of sample questions about these three classes. We're going to be looking into each of these three classes, doing a quick rundown of their basic abilities and some of their easier, more new player friendly subclasses, and giving recommendations on any choices you get to make. So, before we start, Evan, do you have any questions about any of these three classes in general?
Oh, I came prepared. Well, I'll start off with some of my more, I guess, basic questions.
Yep.
Before we get into a little bit more of the specifics. But I pretty much picked this class just because it felt like, after reading a little bit into it, it felt pretty easy to understand. But it also just, I don't know, I kind of like that type of character in many games that I would play. But would you consider this to be an easier class for beginners?
My opinion, this is the easiest class to start playing.
So you're just saying I'm smart?
I'm saying you pick the smart choice for a new player.
I'll take what I can get.
Yeah. Like, okay, everyone says the fighter's easiest, but the fighter has so many choices at level 1 that you can easily end up with something that you don't like. Barbarian, you know what you're getting into. You're just a big dude that hits stuff hard.
Mm-hmm. And even when you get into like barbarian subclasses, like way later, it keeps it pretty concise and simple. Like fighter has like maneuvers. Fighter has like there are ones that can cast spells and stuff. It's just fighters can get very complicated.
So
Barbarians, whack.
Yeah. It's like
get angry really good.
Level
whack
1,
hard.
You get rage and unarmored defense, and already let's take rage out of the equation. Just on unarmored defense, comparing that to the paladin and the fighter armor, it's so much easier. You look at your sheet, you add 2 numbers together and add 10, and you're done.
Yep. Easy.
The fighter, you have to flip to the book. You have to see, like, okay, do I have enough strength for the heavy armor? Do I have enough dex for the lighter armor?
Am I proficient with these armors? Because there are some fighters who aren't proficient with heavy armor.
Paladin's the same way, except you don't really go dex on paladins. You can. It's super fun. but for the most part, you go heavy armor. But barbarians, by far, are the easiest. There is some, like, very nuanced technicality rule pitfalls, but, like, the starting equipment literally covers all that. So, starting off, the signature ability, Rage. As a bonus action, you can Rage, which gives you advantage on strength checks, like skill checks, and strength saving throws. Whenever you make a melee attack with a strength, using your strength, you get a bonus to the damage, equal to the Rage. The Rage bonus damage, which is on the handy chart at the beginning of the class. And then you get resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing. So not only do you start with the highest health of all the classes, level 1, chances are you're not dealing with magic at all. So you're guaranteed to have, or you're more likely to be going up against the bludgeoning, the piercing, and the slashing damage. Which, when you're raging, you just half that damage. Mm-hmm. So at level 1, you're already the tankiest class.
So every fight I should just be meatballing in front of everybody?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Every time.
Throw yourself in front of everybody every time.
But when we have players like Andre, who likes to reposition in odd spots very close to enemies, how do I work with that?
Okay, so... Okay, Catherine.
I say just let him go. I just say let him go, because 9 times out of 10, hi, playing the squishy wizard with 8 whole hit points. I'm gonna be behind you. 9 times out of 10. Andre's probably fine. I think Andre can take a hit. Mm-hmm. Me? Something breathes on me too hard and I just die, you know?
What about Zach's character? Does he have a lot of health? I don't remember.
Zach's character is relatively squishy. However, he mostly will be next to you anyways. Mm-hmm. He's either going to be next to you or back with Catherine, depending if he wants to go range or melee. Rogues, they want to be going around just picking off the high priority targets. It's as a barbarian, as the meatball of the group, you just want to be close to as many enemies as possible. Because think of it like this: the lower the intelligence of the enemy, the more likely they are to attack the meatball.
Alright, so I'm the meatball and everybody else is the sauce.
Yeah. I guess you can say that.
You're the meat, I'm the spaghetti. Mm-hmm. The others are the sauce.
I like that.
But yeah. I think ideally also get it like rage is really good because you can do it as a bonus action. And you don't have to do the order of action, bonus action, movement. You can move, bonus action, action. You can bonus action, move, action. So being able to rage at the very start of battle, even if you don't necessarily get a hit off, but you've attracted enough attention that they're going to get a hit off on you, and it's already half. It's half to begin with.
Yeah. And on top of that, as long as you attempt to make an attack, you can keep it going for a minute, which is 10 rounds. Mm-hmm. Which only really big combats last more than 10 rounds.
So how often can I actually rage? Is it once every 10 rounds?
It's...
I'm trying to remember if at level 1 you have
You get
one
2
or
rages. 2. You get 2 rages at level 1.
Yeah.
So in the book, in the very first page of Barbarian, there is a chart saying how many rages you have per long or short rest. I don't remember off the top of my head. But you can use every minute or 10 rounds. You can use one. But like, say if it ends early, you can use it right away. You just can't rage if you're already raging.
All right. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, you can't double down on the anger, unfortunately.
I mean, you can, but that's level 3.
But it would be a waste. It would definitely
No,
be
like,
a
you
waste.
actually can as Berserker. It's just you get more angry.
You just get angrier.
So... yeah, like, it's really just... all these classes you want to be up in front. There's some minor... depending on, like, your build, you might want to be in, like, a different spot, but that's getting really in-depth. But for the most part, you just want to be front and center. You want everyone attacking you as much as possible. And what's nice about your character is, as a bugbear, you have long limbs. So that means you can do a melee attack from farther away. And with your whip, even farther.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I felt like pairing my character with the javelin, hand axe, and whip felt right, just because of the amount of range I could also have. So I don't always have to be glued onto an enemy. That just made a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. That's really good.
Your build's like, it isn't standard, but it works pretty well for what you want it to do.
What's a standard build look like?
Great axe.
Yeah.
That's it.
Ideally, I think one of the best-ish barbarian builds that you can do is either bugbear, like you've done, or half-orc, because half-orcs have... I know barbarians get this at one point, but they sort of get it where they can bring themselves back to 1 HP when they fall. So having a half-orc barbarian is really good, because at one point you can just, I think, maximum of twice, come back from 0 HP and go, no, only 1. You'll still be at like 1 health, mind you, but being able to do that twice,
like
perfect.
Half-orcs and barbarians have a lot of duplicating abilities that stack together. Like, barbarians will get this ability where whenever they crit, they add an extra weapon dice. Half-orcs have that baked in. So if you have a great axe half-orc barbarian and you crit, you're rolling 3d12 damage.
It's literally insane.
Yeah. And that's like before you double the 1 dice for...
Yeah.
So in theory you're rolling 12 or 4d12. Which not a lot lives.
And at some point, barbarians, I can't remember if it's level 2 or level 3, you will have a reckless attack as well. Which means for your turn, for each of your attacks, you'll get advantage on the roll. But any attack coming towards you has advantage.
It is level 2.
Against you. Yeah. But it's something to look forward to, because essentially, while you're raging, you can recklessly attack to get advantage, and then all damage against you is halved anyway.
Yeah, like that's the whole...
that's
piercing, the bread and butter.
Bludgeoning. Yeah. So you can give yourself advantage and then are resistant to most of the damage that's going to be coming in towards you, which essentially means you can just get advantage for free. It's really, really good at lower levels when you're not facing off against like high magic users and stuff. Once you start getting into like magic territory, it's a lot harder for a barbarian.
Yeah, barbarians are definitely the early game powerhouse, but they kind of like transition into the tank to a damage dealer later on. Like the class, like the role will shift, but it does scale very well.
Mm-hmm.
It's just you're not, but it's like really, really good early. Also, level 2, you get Danger Sense.
Danger Sense is
You
really
get
good too.
advantage on Dexterity saving throws against effects you can see, such as traps and spells.
So ideally, if you're going dungeoning with a level 2 barbarian, you'll send the level 2 barbarian forward to sort of suss out any traps.
Yeah, as the guinea pig.
Obviously, you're going to be looking for traps along the way with your party, but having the barbarian lead means they'll likely be the one to trigger a trap you missed, but tend to have advantage on the saving throw because most dungeons have like dexterity-based traps that you have to avoid.
It's either Dexterity or Constitution, and which
And I believe,
you have a bunch of Constitution anyways.
yeah. Ideally, for barbarian, when you're building a barbarian, you want to max out your like strength and con are going to be the two that you focus on the most, followed up with dexterity.
And then the other three
because
literally
that will-
don't matter.
One of the biggest stereotypes is playing a stupid barbarian. Like, that's the thing. Most barbarians make intelligence the dump stat. I love it and I hate it at the same time. Because I think it would just be hilarious to have a barbarian who's just not intimidating at all. Whose dump stat is charisma and just can't. They're just so nice. They're just so lovely. And then they get so angry. And then they can just beat the shit out of people. While they're in a rage, but they have like literally no ability to intimidate anybody. So you'll like send them forward, and it's like, who the hell is this guy? And you're like, listen, you should really leave my friends alone. You should leave them alone. And they're gonna laugh at you.
Please punch you in the face?
Yeah, kind of. Grr, I'm angry. And then you rage, and then you take their heads off, and you're like, you really should have left my friends alone.
Something that also comes up a lot is people get stuck in the mindset of you have to be a savage barbarian.
Yeah.
I've
That's another pretty big one.
played 2 barbarians, and only one of them was more tribal, not savage. Where the other one was like, he was just like just a guy that's like ready to explode at any moment because of like stress at home. I had played with a barbarian who was a pirate, and his rule was he wouldn't rage unless he gets hit. And the harder he gets hit, the more likely he is to rage.
And that's the good shit, because being a barbarian is based on rage. So, ideally, your character doesn't necessarily have to be some savage from the outback, or the outlands, who lives in this sort of, like, weird forest. I mean, you can do that. Outlander is a really good barbarian background to take. Because of the benefits. And one of the options is to be literally raised by wolves. So, you know. But it doesn't have to be that way. It's like a stereotype that barbarians are... Like Conan. Conan the Barbarian is a really good...
They had him in the little
wearing
intro
fur,
video.
no shirt, big muscles. But another way you could do it is an ancestral... If we want to get into subclasses, but you could do an ancestral guardian barbarian who's a noble, who put so much stock in their family and tradition that it has affected them down the line. But because of their anger management issues, they were cast out from their noble house until they learned to control it. But in this sense, the rage is to their benefit because it helps them in battle.
Yep. So going into subclasses, the 2 in the player's handbook, they... for newer players, I actually don't remember what there's Totem and there's Berserker. I don't remember what 2 of the totems do. Because
yeah.
Bear
The
Totem is
best-
just so good.
Bear Totem is superior. in every conceivable way, because you're just resistant to almost everything. The wolf is another good one, because it's very helpful for rogues and stuff. And then eagle is like,
So, bear, you have resistance to all damage except for psychic.
Mm-hmm.
So
that
it's
means
like
fire, electricity, poison, just everything. But your brain's still susceptible.
Yeah. This is that's the subclass you want to go if you want to be that late game tank.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're raging, you just don't take damage sometimes. Eagle,
I think
you're fast.
Eagle's really good to kind of counteract the effects of recklessly attacking. Kind of. It's mostly like they have disadvantage on opportunity attacks on you, and you get to like run as a bonus action.
Yeah. It's good for It's good for the barbarian that wants to run up and just smack the wizard, but he doesn't want to cut through everything to get there.
You just barrel through. You just go.
And then wolf is good if you have a lot of other melee characters in the party. Because when you're raging, everyone that's around a creature that's next to you has advantage.
And I think wolf is really good when paired with a rogue.
Yeah.
Because rogues can go in, do the stab, get their sneak attack because you're also attacking the enemy, and then have advantage on the attack roll against them because you're literally within range.
Then
does everybody have some sort of sneak attack, or is it just like certain
rogues.
classes? Okay.
A lot of classes do have
Just
ways of upping their extra damage. Like yours, it's your rage.
Mm-hmm.
Fighters, it's a bit more complicated. And then paladins, they have the smite, which is chef's kiss. Love it.
Fighters just get to hit more.
Yeah.
They get more attacks per action, and then because they have second wind, is it second wind?
Second wind, yeah.
Might be thinking. Yeah, they can just do their attack action again. Because second wind gives them another action, and if they have 2 attacks per action, that's 4 attacks in one turn that they can do. So they just get to hit a lot.
Okay, so let's run through a little bit more of your questions regarding barbarians. And then I have some questions we can pull from, that I pulled from various groups.
Alrighty. Well, when I was reading more into just barbarians, I guess, I noticed like I believe it said like 3rd level, so like obviously I'd have to level up to get there, but it was talking about biting, clawing, and like I'm assuming like some sort of tail whip. Well, I guess the first question, I have to be level 3 to use that, but can I do that like mid combat, or does that have to be like start or something? Like it just seems like an awkward move.
Class.
That is from a very specific subclass. That's UA right now, I believe. Or no, it's from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. It's the Beast.
Okay.
Path of the Beast subclass.
Yeah, it said form of the beast.
Yeah. So that is when you rage, you get either chompers, claws, or a tail. So when you rage, you get to pick one, and that forms. So while you're raging, at the start of your rage, you will get one of those things, and you have to pick one. And then it'll say for the abilities whether you can use it as a bonus action or an attack action or whatever it benefit it gives you. But it will tell you like whether it's an action or a bonus action, It's just something that is triggered by your rage when you're playing that specific subclass.
For newer
And
players,
I guess you can continue, Luke.
I was gonna say for newer players, I would highly suggest just sticking with what's in the book, and go either Bear Totem or Berserker. Berserker, I think it's when you're raging, you can use it. No, I'll just open it up. Okay, Berserker. You can go into a frenzy when you rage. If you do so for the duration of the rage, you can make a single melee attack as a bonus action. And then when your rage ends, you get tired. So that's like, that will take you more into a damage roll. So you see,
And when you say I get tired, do I literally have to like back myself out and go take a nap?
you
Because
get
that happened to me before.
you get a level of exhaustion, and I think it's at 6. You just flat out die, and you get reduced effects as you go.
Yeah.
So if I reach a point of being too tired, my character just dies.
Yep.
Yeah, because at that point, it's because you're not sleeping or / you're not resting.
Yeah.
So
You're not
much
taking
like in
time
real
to heal.
life, you
Yeah.
don't sleep, you die.
Oh my.
One level of exhaustion isn't too bad because it's disadvantage on ability checks. So usually you can do pretty well with just one level of exhaustion. But as you go forward, the effects get worse and worse and worse and worse until you inevitably just kick it.
Okay. You have another question?
Yeah, two. They're not directly related to like, I guess a specific class, but I was reading about the disguise kit.
Okay.
But how often does that actually get used?
It depends on the game.
Yeah, I understand that's completely
Like,
situational. I'm just curious. Like, do you guys often see it in your games?
It's helpful for like
When espionage.
yeah.
Because it's how one of my DMs described it. It's like a theater makeup kit. So you can change, like, you can make yourself look like a little bit older. You can kind of pop on some contacts. It's to, like, make changes. Because if you're a rogue, you can use the disguise kit to go in a place, wipe all, like, do what you need to do, take all of that stuff off, and you're back to yourself. And you never committed the crime.
Yeah.
If you're a wanted criminal, every day you can just kind of get ready, use the disguise kit, disguise yourself, and then go about your life. Nobody's none the wiser that you're this wanted criminal.
Like you can't drastically change yourself. Like as a bugbear, you can't make yourself not furry.
Yeah, I figured that. I was thinking more so like using it on anybody else on the team.
You can totally do that.
Because it's like, I guess for specific races it just wouldn't work because you can't unfur a bugbear.
Yeah, like you would use it to change, like, you can't make yourself look like another race with it, but you can easily make yourself look different. Like if you're a bugbear, you can make yourself look like a different bugbear. You can make yourself, if you're a human, make yourself look like a different human. But if you're an elf, you can't make yourself look like a dwarf, for example.
What if I just get a haircut? Then what?
I mean, there's a big height difference, and you know how dwarves and beards? It's not the same with elves.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna sound wild, but I think with the disguise kit, humans are probably the most versatile.
Yeah. Like
because in theory, you could make yourself look like a tiefling with fake horns in a disguise kit. You could make yourself look like an Asmar with like slightly glowing eyes. You could pop on some elf ears, fake elf ears and make yourself look like an elf. It's kind of wild.
I'm going to pull a question from my sample list here. Regarding barbarians, do you need to be chaotic to play a barbarian? And the answer is no. I always like to pick my alignment after I play the character a bit, so I can flesh out like who they are before I go into an alignment. Personally, but you don't need to be chaotic to be a barbarian.
I think it comes with the territory of being a barbarian, because who in their right mind would just throw themselves in front of enemies and start fights in that way? And that's kind of the stereotypical barbarian. But you could be a lawful good barbarian who follows the laws of their family, their city, their tribe, whatever, to a T, and strives to be the best they could be. You could be a neutral barbarian who just has anger management issues, who doesn't really want to hurt anybody, but is totally okay with it. You just, whoever has the coin, you do what you need to do. And of course you can be just neutral evil.
Yep. Or chaotic evil.
Yeah, chaotic evil. Just starting shit for fun.
Yeah.
But you don't necessarily need to be chaotic leaning to play a barbarian, but a lot of barbarian players play them chaotic leaning.
It's easier to get into character, I find, that way. If you go the more stereotypical route, but there's so much fun just playing something that's a little bit left field. Okay, do you have any other questions regarding barbarians? Then we can move on to fighter.
Sort of, again, maybe not class specific, but I took the drum, right? Because that's just a personal thing, but when could you seriously, like, use a drum? Like, maybe I could see, like, as a distraction, but is there anything outside of that?
Mechanically, there's not really a time for it. Thematically, that's up to you to decide. Yeah. If I were playing a barbarian with a drum, as part of my rage, I would like do like a war beat, and that will get me psyched up, and then I charge into battle.
Mm-hmm. Other than that, it would just be mostly roleplay based stuff.
Yeah.
Like you're putting on a performance for your friends, you're by the campfire on watch, slowly playing your drum. Like a lot of stuff is that you get sometimes is more for the roleplay aspect of D&D, more for the RP side of TTRPG.
So teabagging enemies after killing them, yay or
You
nay?
just like drum and teabag them. Why not?
Sure, dude.
That's usually how you get labeled a chaotic party, but you know,
Yeah.
I feel like we're already kind of there.
So I like that.
No, yeah, you guys really haven't interacted with society. Okay, so should we go to fighter, or do you want to do a sample build for barbarian? That could be. We already touched on like the half orc and the bugbear, but one I want to bring up is the hill dwarf. So hill dwarfs, you get, I believe it's an extra 2 HP per level. Just gotta find it. Oh yeah, no, it's like my favorite thing to do. Hill dwarf.
Yeah, so Hill dwarf is really
You
good.
get so dwarven toughness. Your hit point maximum increases by 1, and it increases 1 time every time you gain a level, and you get already +2 Constitution for being a dwarf. Then I don't want to get into the feats too much, but at level 4, instead of taking a ability score improvement, you can choose to take a feat, which is like an extra ability. And then you just take the tough feat, which gives you an extra 2 HP per level. So by the time you're, I think, level 4, you're getting a total of 12 bonus extra XP for free.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the time you're level 20, I mathed it out one time, and if you get max HP rolls, you get 400 HP by the time you're level 20.
Kind of insane.
Which even late game enemies will have a very hard time getting through all that. Like they'll have to commit at least 2 rounds, I think, to drop you.
And then another really good feat for Barbarian too is Sentinel. Like,
actually, Sentinel will be really good for your character.
Yeah, Sentinel, it's like if somebody tries to run past you and you get an opportunity to attack on them, it stops them from moving forward. Most people, like most characters, when they have an opportunity to attack, they get to do extra damage, but the person still gets to like run by and make their movement. Sentinel completely stops that. Their movement is reduced to 0 and they're stuck beside you or wherever you stop them.
It's very useful. And with your character having such a high range, and like, if someone leaves 15 feet, is within 15 feet of you, then leaves that 15 feet, you get an opportunity attack with your build right now. Like, you have a ranged weapon.
It's crazy.
I'm looking up Sentinel right now.
Another kind of like basic one that you could do is Great Weapon Master.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But for your character, that doesn't really apply because you don't use a big two-handed weapon.
I genuinely think Sentinel is probably going to be the best bet for you.
So,
noted.
Do we want to jump to the most customizable class?
If we have to. If we must.
It's my least favorite warrior, but they're so fun. So fighters.
They're just so powerful.
Basically, you're just good with weapons. For the most part, that's it. Your big choice you get right away, which for the most part completely depends on which weapon you pick.
Mm-hmm.
There is a trap in here for new players that a lot of new players will fall into, which is the protection fighting style. It very rarely ever comes up, and I personally recommend that you don't take it if you're playing a fighter.
Yeah. It's very dependent on people staying beside you.
Yeah. And so basically the way I like to put it is, the allies this benefits, you'll never use it on, because you're always going to be far in front. And the allies that will be next to you don't care about it.
Mm-hmm.
So
dueling, I think, is a really good option to take. And archery. I usually like to leave archery to the rangers when I'm building a fighter. I don't usually make an archer fighter, but it's still pretty good.
Archer fighters are very powerful.
Yeah.
They just dish out a ton of damage. And with the archery fighting style, you get +2 to hit.
Yeah.
And
Just...
it's very helpful. There's a lot of really busted builds at level 1 you can do, but we won't get into that yet. Next is
the build a fighter, man. Makes my head hurt already.
Yeah. It's real. Fighters are just pick your weapon, pick the fighting style that goes with it, and then move. Just coast.
Mm-hmm.
We'll skip defense for now. We'll come back to that in a second. The dueling fighting style. This is like you have a weapon in one hand, no weapon in the other. You can use a shield. So if you're playing someone that's sword and board, you want to take dueling, because you get a bonus 2 damage to all your weapon attacks that are one-handed.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's so good.
If you're playing a fighter with a big two-handed weapon, you want great weapon fighting. It lets you re-roll 1s and 2s for your damage. Now, this is good for the pole arms, but it's busted on the greatsword and the maul.
Mm-hmm.
Because their weapon, their damage dice is 2d6. So if either or both of those are a 1 or a 2, you can re-roll them. So you're basically, your lowest damage before modifiers is around a 6. Then it's protection, and then 2 weapon fighting. This is the main one why I don't suggest fighters to new players, because having them to learn the action and bonus attack offhand and not adding stuff to damage,
yeah,
and explaining how this circumvents that, it gets kind of annoying. And then finally,
it's
okay, go ahead. Sorry.
You can get 2 weapon fighting with just a feat.
Yeah. Can you?
Rangers get it for free. Fighters get it with the specific fighting style, but you can also just take the 2 weapon fighting feat.
And you get a lot more with the feat also. Like you get your plus, I think it's plus 1 or 2 to your armor class.
Mm-hmm.
Then I see a lot of new players take this because it's simple. There is the defensive or the defense fighting style, which you just get as long as you're wearing armor, plus 1 to AC. I see a lot of people take this when they go sword and shield, so they can get just a ridiculously high AC at level 1.
Mm-hmm.
Reason I don't
suggest
suggest
if you play your cards right, you can get 20.
Yeah. Reason I don't ever suggest players take it is because it's boring.
Yeah.
Like, the fun that you get out of it, it's like a 5% chance when you get hit.
Yeah.
Where everything else other than protection is consistently coming into effect.
Mm-hmm.
But what I recommend for new players is pick which weapon and then pick the one that best corresponds with that weapon. Then you get Second Wind, which means you can heal yourself.
Yeah. Just bonus action, second one. Get healing back.
It's really good at level 1. Like level 1, 2, and 3, it's good, and then it starts tapering off a bit. You get Action Surge at level 2, which gives you another action and bonus action.
So good.
I'm not going to get into multi-classing at all this episode.
Oh god.
But a lot of people will go 2 levels of fighter just for this feat, or this ability. It's the best ability in the game.
Just being able to get another action back in general is chef kiss perfect.
So, martial archetypes. There's 2 in the player's handbook I would suggest. For new players, I suggest taking champions. The champion fighter, they can crit easier. And later on, they get a second fighting style. And that's when I recommend you take defense fighting style, because you already have your weapon. This gives you more armor. You're not going to use more than one weapon. You're not going to use more than one weapon fighting style, that is. Then Battlemaster, you get special maneuvers, which you can use to add extra effects to your attacks.
That's when it starts to get complicated, because the Battlemaster just keeps getting more as they go.
Yeah.
And you have to keep track of so much.
If you want a little bit of that, there is a feat for it, which gives you, I think it's 1 fighting style, or not fighting style, 1 maneuver that you can use twice, I believe. But fighters get the most ability score improvements of any class in the game. So I think they get twice as much as everyone else, which means like this class is meant for feats.
It really is.
All of your go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say all of your like basic class abilities are relatively simple. You get all of your meat and potatoes from feats.
Yeah. And feats are very, very effective for fighters. More so than ability score improvements. Like 9 times out of 10, you're going to take a feat anyway, unless you're... even most casters, there are a few feats that are still really good for casters, but for the most part, when you're playing like a warrior class, you're going to want to take a feat that just lets you do more.
Like, most time, the Barbarian and the Paladin, normally they take 1, they can fit in 1 feat to their build, and if they choose to take 2, they're sacrificed. That's when the stats, the not taking the stat improvement starts to show. However, fighters, you can literally take 5 feats and still have max stats by the time you're level 20.
It's broken as hell.
It does suffer from the I might as well take one issue where you don't really need a stat improvement anymore, but you already have all the feats that will actually do stuff. And then you're just taking stuff that doesn't fit your character just because it's the most useful one. But the 3 that I do recommend for fighters are, even if you're playing Battlemaster, you take the one that gives you a maneuver. Then I would recommend you take the one that best suits your weapon. You take the one that best suits your armor. And those are your 3 main feats. You can always fit Toughen, you always can fit Sentinel, but it all depends on your character.
Mm-hmm.
So did you have any other questions about anything we talked about so far?
Well, I mean, you've answered all the ones I had, and you're answering things I didn't even realize. Like, you guys have given me questions and answers at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot deeper than I could have ever imagined. That's for sure.
Well, since we've left Barbarian, so there's not much you have to worry about right now.
I can't even imagine what other people have to understand with their characters and roles and stuff.
Oh, these are like
Gets
the
to be a
easiest
lot.
ones.
Yeah, I know.
So some questions that I pulled from various groups are, why do they matter? These are like the best tanks by far. Like, without a doubt. Barbarians have the highest health in the game. Fighters just get so much utility and versatility that they can fit in any role. Paladins are like, they're what takes your party from good to busted sometimes, just by standing there. And we'll get into that in a second. Easiest one, Barbarian, for the reasons I stated earlier. They're all really good. And they all sort of can, like, you can interchange them a bit. But they're all just amazing. Like, they're all good choices. Okay, we kind of touched on this a bit with the Barbarian. How do other people stereotype / feel about these classes?
Barbarian, we already really
we
did
touched on
touch
Barbarian. We'll touch on Paladin in a second.
For fighters, the stereotype is usually mercenary with a sword.
Yeah, and boring, which is not the case. Like,
don't play a fighter. That's so boring. Play something else. Play like a ranger or something. Like, no. Fighters get so much.
Yeah, like people. I will say fighters do suffer from, they're not flashy.
Yeah.
Like, they're efficient, but they're not flashy.
You want to be good in battle? Play a fighter.
Mm-hmm.
You want to kill things quickly, concisely, and efficiently? Play a fighter.
Like, fighters do get the most attacks out of any class. So
it's crazy.
Their damage comes in small amounts, but a lot of them. So you don't actually realize how much damage you're doing. Unlike the Barbarian and the Paladin, who they have really high spikes, but very few attacks in comparison.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you go a fighter that dual wields weapons, you get 10 attacks a turn with action surge.
Broken. You just kind of like sit there and wait for it to be your turn.
Yeah. Like,
and then the fighter's already killed everybody.
So, honestly, for recommended fighter builds, you go variant human, which gets you a feat at level 1, and then you just pick whatever weapon you want, and what fighting style goes with that weapon. My personal favorite is you go great weapon fighting, you take the great sword, and then level 3 you go champion. Because with great weapon fighting, if you kill something or crit, you can make another attack as a bonus action.
Just attacks for days, baby.
So and another build I saw that I really liked was this guy, he went, I think it was, he just played a archer battle master, and anytime something was coming close to the backliners, he would do like up tripping attack, make them drop their weapon, and basically just slow them down to the point where they can't actually get to them.
Yeah, that's busted. That
Like,
sounds fun though, but that's like, damn, you really went, not today, when people were coming towards you.
Actually, I have a funny story about another fighter that I had the best time running for him. He was a archer fighter also, with the like, I don't know what it was, but he had the worst luck.
Oh,
And the way I rule,
the dice just didn't like him.
no, it was freaky. The way I rule range attacks is if you roll a 1 and there's an ally within like line of sight of where you're shooting, you hit your ally.
Oh
And
no.
I swear, it was either a 1 or a 20. If there was no ally that could be hit, he would roll a 20. If
Oh
there
my
was, he would
God.
roll a 1.
That's uncanny.
And I think he was young. I want to say 12, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay.
He was one of my players' sons that he would bring to the games. And this one time, they're in a fight in a kind of like an open field, and he runs up towards an enemy, like around to the back. I'm like, okay, he's gonna stab him. He has a rapier. And he goes, I take a step back, and I shoot him in the back of the head. And he rolls a 1 and downs another player. It was
Oh, poor
uncanny.
baby. That's terrible.
And like, at this point in the game, the whole table knew that was like a thing that just happened. And when he said he shoots him in the back of the head, everyone just looked at the one player whose character was the only one in line of sight. It was on 1 HP. It was like, it was
Aw.
perfect.
That's comedic timing right there.
Mhm.
That's a big feels bad, man. F in the chat.
Honestly, it was one of the highlights of that session. It was so funny. Like, the more you play D&D, you learn it to be not a tactical game, but just a game that's fun.
Yeah.
Okay,
'Cause that's the goal at the end of the day, is to have fun.
so I have 4 questions left. One of them we kind of already answered, but we left out the Paladin for it. So, which class hits the hardest?
Ooh.
With one
Fighters hit a lot.
Fighters hit a lot, but they don't really hit hard
Mm-mm. Barbarians can,
if they
but
crit.
not always. Mm-hmm. Paladins get smite.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, baby.
How do other people
Smite is
feel
kind of
about
the
the
saving
class? That it's a stick in the mud. And that's not the case.
I think the major stereotype with paladins is that they're self-righteous, because we didn't really go over the paladin stereotypes, but the
Yeah.
self-righteous, holier than thou on a mission from God.
Yeah.
That's the stereotype for
Which
paladins.
is
And
completely false.
it's, yeah, you don't have to play your paladins that way. Paladins stand for ideals. You don't even need a deity. to play a paladin. You don't even need a god. Sure, it helps. It's kind of beneficial, but paladins are devoted to ideals. So
yeah,
you can have a god that like lines up with it, but they're not necessary.
Yeah.
You get your magic just from being so devoted to a very specific ideology.
Like, it definitely pays off, but they do have probably the biggest roleplay restrictions because you have to stick to your ideals.
Yeah. If you don't, you become an oath breaker.
And depending on your DM, like, the way I rule it is, it's okay. Did you go completely against your oath? You're now an oath breaker paladin. Did you like not follow your oath? You broke it, but it's like meh. I just ruled.
Yeah.
You really don't have a class for a little bit until you get back on track.
Yeah.
But
Which makes sense.
with paladins, they do have a very like holy flavor,
Yeah.
which does like lean them back into the whole religious thing, but you really don't need that. And well, the first ability doesn't really help. Divine Sense. It lets you sense any celestials, fiends, or undead within 60 feet. Which, it's good.
Mm-hmm.
It comes up every once in a while.
It's so situational.
But
Like, it's one of those things. It's like detect good and evil as a spell. It's like, when are you really need it? Like,
it's helpful to have.
Yeah.
Because it usually will come up over the course of a campaign once or twice, especially with undead.
Mm.
So like if you guys had a paladin last session, let's say you were playing a paladin other than barbarian, and when the fog came rolling in, you used divine sense, you would have sensed the skeletons. Also, at level 1, you get Lay on Hands, which, honestly, other than Smite, this is one of my favorite abilities in the game.
You touch somebody and they are healed. It is the inherent homoeroticism of healing magic.
It's so funny.
Touch-based healing magic. It's so it's so good. It's like, you're hurt, you're bleeding, you're my ally. Touches your face. I fix. Healed. But it's touch-based, so you can't get away with like doing like healing word, be like, get better soon.
You have
and
to
then
touch.
it fixes it. You have to touch.
Which
It's I think
it's
not just for paladins, but the cantrips like guidance and resistance, those are touch-based too. So if you're just giving out guidance for free, you're constantly like touching somebody on their shoulder, on their arm. You're just like guidance.
You can play you can make your paladin a coach that gets all that stuff, and all he does is he just goes around slapping your teammates on the ass, just giving them buffs.
Yeah. Paladins are really good at buffing allies and themselves.
Yeah. Going into detail on this, basically you get a pool of points equal to 5 times your fighter level, or paladin level. And you can use those points to heal that amount, or you can expend 5 points to cure 1 disease or neutralize 1 poison. So, let's say this actually comes really handy in vampire and werewolf based games, where if you can track vampirism or lycanthropy, a level 1 paladin can fix that. And Catherine, do you have anything else to talk about level 1 paladins with?
Paladin I think is one of the classes I've touched the least when it comes to all the different classes. I know paladins are also very good at being the face because charisma is already their spell casting. Yep. So you can play a character, a paladin, who's it's one of the reasons why they come off as holier than thou, but they're very good at what they do. They get, like, you want to take persuasion, you want to buff your charisma. It just makes spellcasting easier and convincing people to do things you want easier. So a paladin maybe convincing a guard to leave them alone is pretty good. Taking inspiring leader as a feat, if you're playing a variant human paladin, like right off the bat, is phenomenal. You get to give people temporary hit points for free. They're just one that I have touched the least because of the roleplay restrictions. I like to be a little bit looser. I don't like leaning into or like being limited to just one specific set of things. So that's part of the reason why I haven't touched them as much. But their smite, their lay on hands, and like just their health in general, and their ability to be very charismatic and charming and convince people, but maybe we don't have to fight. But then being able to absolutely wreck shit when they do fight is just, you know?
Now, like, polar opposite of Catherine, paladins are my favorite class by far.
Yeah.
Like, I love playing a paladin.
I like to do no thoughts, head empty, do whatever I want, bang bang, barbarian.
And there is sample oaths in the book, depending on which subclass you want, but you can also make them up.
Yeah.
And as long as a DM, my ruling on that would be, as long as you can fit it into your oath, I'm fine with it.
In theory, you could take the Green Lantern oaths and use them for your paladin.
Yeah.
And just change them up.
Ever so slightly.
Just so slightly. Because you could use the Green Lantern oath for Oath of Ancients instead of it being so, like, greenery focused. Or, like, earth focused, because that's another thing, is that there are very stylistic choices that come with specific oaths, and Oaths of Ancients are very, like, earthy, woodsy kind of based.
We can get into the stylistics of the oaths, because I do think that's important. Because paladins, among all classes, you need to at least think to level 3 before you make a paladin. They're definitely the least noob-friendly of the 3 warriors, because of how much forethinking you need to do with your character. But once we'll get to that in a second. Level 2, you get a fighting style. You get either protection, great weapon fighting, dueling, or defense. So it's basically you're extremely hard to kill, or you do a ridiculous amount of damage. You get spell casting, but that's not what we're here for.
Yeah.
Divine Smite. This is the ability that breaks paladins. This is why they have the single highest attack, like, damage on one attack in the game. Starting at 2nd level, when you hit a creature with a melee weapon attack, you can expend 1 spell slot to deal damage to that target in addition to the weapon's damage. Extra damage is 2d8 for the 1st level, and every time you use a higher level spell slot, you add a d8 to a max of 5d8. You get a bonus one if it's an undead or a fiend. Now, that's all fine, it's the when you hit a creature. So you can choose to use this after you hit or after you crit. Because when you crit, you damage all of the dice that aren't crit dice. Crit dice being like the Barbarian, the half-orc thing. Which means, oh, I crit? Yeah, that one's getting smited.
Yeah.
So let's say...
Smite is so good because you don't have to state that you're using it ahead of time.
There is some spells which are, you precast them and then you attack. But... okay, let's say you use a longsword. Longsword and shield. Typical Paladin motif. Oh, I crit? Okay, so that's 1d8 for the weapon. I'm gonna smite it with a level 1 spell slot. Okay, so that's 3d8 on the attack. Doubled. 6d8 damage before modifiers.
It's insane. For like, and is that level 1? That's level 1.
That's level 1.
Yeah, paladins are nutty.
It's so good.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's your bread and butter. It's really, really tempting just to spend them all right away. But as you get higher level, you get those higher level spell slots. You basically turn all your lower level spell slots into smites. Then you save those big ones for crits.
You just knock all the fucking enemies off the board. It's, ugh. Once again, chef kiss. Mwah.
It's so good. Back in one of my first games, I played a multi-class Paladin Warlock. Just for the purpose of this story, Warlocks also get some version of Smite if you play a certain subclass. I think I was level 8 at the time. And there was a little bit of infighting between characters. And I was playing a really angry Paladin. So I do the precast smite. I do the cantrip called Green Flame Blade, which as a part of that attack you make an attack. Or sorry, part of the spell you make an attack. I crit. I had like a really busted sword. But then I said to the other player, I go, I'm sorry, but I need to know how much this does. And I pop my Paladin Smite and my Warlock Smite. And I did 162 damage with one attack.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Good lord. Yeah, Paladin's definitely hit the hardest.
Oh yeah, but that, mind you, I had like a Flame Tongue mixed with a Holy Avenger. So that was a lot of, but like, I normally play in a hobby store with and there's normally like 5 or 6 D&D games going off at the same time that day. In that one attack against a player who, by the way, wasn't even the player that died from it, or character that died from it, it was a different player character.
Jesus.
I did more damage than an entire other table did their whole combat with one attack. And
Good lord.
all those characters were a higher level than me. So if you just want to one-shot stuff in melee, Paladins is what you want to do.
Most definitely.
Later on, all your attacks just have Divine Smite of 1d8. If I'm reading that right. Yeah. Level 11, just you get an extra 1d8 damage on all your attacks.
It's so busted.
Uh,
Paladins are so good at hitting hard and just ending combat.
We're going to skip over some of this stuff for now. But the two things that Paladins should know is their 2 aura abilities. This is what takes, from what I mentioned earlier, Paladins are what takes your party from being great to being broken. It's because of these 2 abilities. Aura of Protection. People within friendly creatures within 10 feet of you gain a bonus to their saving throws equal to your charisma modifier. And you're already building a lot of charisma into your kit. So this just helps buff your party's survivability. Level 18, that goes to 30 feet. Aura of Courage. Friendly creatures within 10 feet of you can't be frightened while you're conscious. Also, at level 18, that increases to 30 feet. But you're a friendly creature towards yourself. You cannot be frightened.
No fear. At all. Ever.
Yeah. Okay. So there's 3 subclasses in the player's handbook. Each has a different theme to them. So Oath of Devotion, it's the stereotypical Holy Knight Paladin.
Mm-hmm.
They are sort of built to deal with undead and fiends in particular. So they're like, these are your stereotypical Holy Knight characters.
Honesty, courage, honor, compassion, and duty. Those are all things that make the Oath of Devotion Paladin. So don't lie, never cheat. Always let your word be your promise. Don't be afraid to act. Though caution is wise, so to be careful. Aid others, protect the weak, and punish those who threaten them, but show mercy to your foes. Temper it with wisdom. Treat everyone with fairness, let your honorable deeds be an example to them. Do as much good as possible while causing the least amount of harm. And be responsible for your actions and your consequences. Protect those entrusted in your care and obey those who have just authority over you. These are the ones who usually follow a church or a deity of some kind.
I also find these to be the most stereotypical stick-in-the-mud paladins.
Yeah. There's no black and white. There's no like shades of gray when it comes to devotion paladins.
Yeah, it's
always black, white, good, evil. Mm-hmm. The right thing, the wrong thing. They don't see the moral nuances in between all that.
Next we have Oath of Ancients. These are your quote-unquote nature paladins, but that's not really the case. These are your leaders. Yeah. These are the people that make people want to follow them. You're a beacon of hope towards people. You guide them.
You inspire the light in others.
This is the... How should I say this? You believe this is the whole thing, that there's good in everybody, and it's your mission to bring that out.
Mm-hmm. They, I feel like, are also the most likely to think they can convince like your typical BBEG that there's another way.
Yeah.
Instead of just immediately going to strike them down. They can see the nuances in the shades of gray, but want to coax people towards the light. Yeah. They still know the difference between good and evil, but they so believe that there's good in everybody. And that it's their duty to bring it out of them.
Now, the next one is the one I would recommend for new players looking to play Paladins. Oath of Vengeance. So
it's by far the easiest to roleplay too, to be honest.
It's the whole point of this is you want that one guy. This is the sort of, you believe that if you take out the right pillar, everything will fall.
Mm-hmm. Somebody did something to you. Somebody caused you harm, and now you are going on this war path to make sure that they don't hurt anybody else the way they hurt you ever again.
And oftentimes, like, as a DM, I love just Paladins in general, because they're so easy to write a story around. If someone says Oath of Vengeance Paladin, I'm like, yes, do it. And I can easily take their backstory and make something out of it for them.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes paladins can fall under characters who have like main character syndrome.
That is true.
But 9 times out of 10, it's just because it works with the story. Mm-hmm. It's just because it's so easy to weave them in and out of the narrative that it's almost accidental at times, but they're very good plot devices or plot drivers, plot pushers.
Well, I've had one paladin who he played Oath of Conquest, and he was a very he had a lot of influence over the world in my game, to say the least. It was a bit of like a main character syndrome thing, but all the players sort of agreed that that's what they wanted to do. Yeah. And like, it was such an influential character. And like Matt says, especially if they take the noble background. Like,
bro, yeah.
Think of classic medieval times. Knights weren't just anybody. They were the sons of noble houses. Knights were rich to begin with. And like, paladins lend so well to that idea.
It's kind of crazy how well they can just lean into it.
Is it pretty much necessary to have something like a paladin or fighter barbarian in your comp every time you play?
No.
Like, could you run sessions without them? Okay.
Yeah. In theory, you don't have to follow any sort of traditional rule set where it says you have to have a fighter, you have to have a caster, you have to have a healer, you have to have a rogue. That's your basic 4-party system. But you could run a party that's just barbarians if you wanted to. You just have to be a little bit more careful. Our party doesn't have a support right now. There's no healer in our in our party.
I will say rangers tend to have minor supportive abilities, but for the most part, you guys are a sharp axe, to say the least, but you'll have no way of resharpening the axe. You're just a guy that whenever his axe gets dull, he doesn't try to fix it, he just gets a new one.
Exactly.
I know that's a really weird analogy, but it makes sense.
It just makes sense. It just works.
So, an important question is, do you need to be lawful to be a paladin? Okay, and my counter question to that is, what's a lawful Oath of Vengeance paladin then? It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Like, I can't think of one. Like, not it wouldn't be lawful to society, it would be lawful to themselves. But you don't have to be lawful to be a paladin. You just have to just believe in yourself to be a paladin.
And that's one of the things that I enjoy, is that they're not necessarily tied to a deity. It's just that more often than not, there's a deity that falls in line with their ideals.
The way I always thought is, your paladin doesn't have to be religious, but that does not mean that there isn't a god helping you.
Yeah.
It could be like, as far as like a character thing goes, you're an Oath of Vengeance paladin against this one god. But the god's like, you know what? I respect that. I'm going to give you powers.
Yeah.
Sort of deal. Like, that's a good character. Just inner conflict and whatnot. But all three of these classes they're all warriors. They're all the front line. At the very base level, they all do the same thing in slightly different ways. They try to be the center of attention in battle. And each have different ways of dealing with that. The Barbarian will reduce the damage and has the most hit points. The Fighter just tries to kill as much stuff as possible. And the Paladin can heal themselves. But they all have the tank baked into their kit.
Exactly.
So my personal sample build for Paladin is, once again, Variant Human, Great Weapon Master, Oath of Vengeance. And that is like, probably in the base book, I would think, your most consistent, highest single target damage out of all the tanks. Mind you, but once that one thing dies, you're going to start to fall off, damage-wise.
Yeah. Just gotta make sure it gets away every now and then.
Now, each of them does have a weakness. Like, the Barbarian really only has one option, which is go in and fight. And the Paladin, it's either they stay back and support, or they go and fight. They don't have any range option. most paladins actually will dump their decks. And you have to make significant investment to have a reasonable range option. So, like, if you can't get to your enemy as a paladin, you can't do anything. Where barbarians tend to have a higher deck, so they can't take ranged weapons. And fighters are just so versatile that their weakness is really mitigated by what they can do and the options they have. So, if there's any other questions, so Evan, going into Sunday's session.
As in last Sunday or this upcoming Sunday?
Let's start with last Sunday.
Right.
How did you feel about the Barbarian right off the bat? First experience.
About
playing the Barbarian.
About the Barbarian?
Yeah. What you're playing right now.
I mean, it's so far pretty straightforward. It's not overly complicated. So for somebody like me who's pretty much brand new, I mean, I only had one prior experience and it was one session. It was mostly troll. Like, it was just, it's hard to count as a real experience. So, I mean, the simpler the better for somebody like me, especially when it's just stand in front and whack people with the weapons I got. Just be creative. It's nice to play it like that as opposed to any other class, it seems.
So I will say the one thing I really like about Barbarian is that they actually don't get a fighting style. Because as soon as you pick your fighting style for fighter or paladin, unless you go defense, it just feels really bad if you don't get to use that weapon. Whereas with Barbarians, you don't have a fighting style. So you can constantly be switching your weapons in and out.
Yeah, and that was part of the reason why I chose some of these weapons. Like, I just saw them as multi-purpose, like specifically the whip, where it can be an in-combat item, but it could also be used in other ways outside of combat. So I don't know, I just like that a lot.
I will say, though, with your race choice, the whip does come in handy. Like, your range is crazy. You have 15-foot melee range, like it's such a good, like, you wouldn't think it. A bugbear barbarian with a whip and a drum. So, near the beginning of the stream, I mentioned one minor nuance in the rules that kind of hits barbarians pretty bad. There are extra crit dice. If you're using a greatsword or maul that uses 2d6, you only add 1d6. And the same thing goes for the half-orc. That's why, like, it's recommended you start with a battle axe that's a d12. Rather than the 2d6. Because when you crit at high levels, instead of adding a d6, you're adding a d12. But that's, like, super minuscule nuance that by the time you're at that point, you would already know that. So if there's any other questions, we'll take them now. If you guys actually have any questions about the campaign, I'll answer those.
think we ended off. We kind of ended off on a cliffhanger.
Yeah, it was
for our next fight.
It was a really good. I was happy with that ending.
I don't have any questions. I'm just excited to see what happens next.
Mm-hmm.
I think Andre's gonna die. That's my prediction.
That's my hope and my prayer.
Wait, that Andre dies?
I'm just I'm just basing it off of playstyle, nothing else.
Well, okay, so I guess we'll touch on Ranger a bit. It is technically a warrior class. It does get that D10 hit die. It does get fighting styles, but it's never the main tank of the group. You could do builds with it that will allow it to be like that. But the Barbarian, the Paladin, and the Fighter all really lend themselves good to being the meatball of the group.
I would put Ranger more in like the dex-based stuff than purely warrior.
I definitely put them alongside Rogue and Monk.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than the Fighter, Barbarian, and Paladin. So there's a few more things I'd like to touch on. If you're a DM and you want to reward your warrior, give them something with low AC and high hit points to sink their teeth into. Because nothing feels worse than missing in D&D. However, if you're constantly hitting for big numbers, even if that thing's not a real big threat, just has a lot of hit points, like an ogre. I send ogres oftentimes like right after level ups, personally, because I want to give my players something to have fun with their new abilities with. But as a DM, all these three characters are very easy to work into your story. Paladins and fighters especially.
Mm-hmm.
Chances are the barbarian player just wants to go hit stuff anyways, so they'll always be down for
Sounds
the
about right.
ride. But yeah, I guess we'll give a few more. We'll give a few minutes for any questions to come in chat. Only last question I have for Evan. Now that we did this show, we literally spent, I think, an hour on barbarians. Do you feel more comfortable going into the next game and future games?
Definitely. I mean, answering just my questions alone makes my life easier, and then going into more depth certainly helps as well. Well, and when I had talked to some of my other friends about the barbarians and stuff, and they were like, "Oh, just rage, just be simple with it, like don't even worry about anything else." But like, I didn't even fully understand what that meant. I was like, "What? Like rage? Hello?" And then like one of my very first attacks last week, you were like, "Do you want to rage?" I was like, "Okay." Like now that I like fully understand what's going on with my character, helps a lot. So yeah, definitely more comfortable.
So do you know what like subclass you're thinking of going into?
Hold on, can you repeat that? You cut it a little bit for me.
Do you know which subclass you're thinking about going into?
That I ended up going into?
No, that you're thinking about going into. You don't get currently you're level 1, you don't get to level 3, so you have plenty of time to read up more on the other options.
I mean, for me, like I want to be like more of a. I don't know if I've picked one, but I would say one. Like anything that's the best for a team. I don't want to kind of just solo my way through this kind of thing because like I would kind of depend on other people to guide me. So I would say anything that's best for the team.
There's quite a few options for something like that. Something that will directly help the team that we talked about today is Wolf Totem. But I would still suggest, if you do want to go Totem Barbarian, go Bear Totem. Because it's so tanky and you can hold up a lot of people. Matt in chat actually suggests you go Storm Herald.
Oh, Storm Herald would be interesting too.
I don't have the book with me right now, so if Catherine, can you pull it up and just give him a quick rundown of it?
Yeah, give me 2 seconds.
If I recall, it's more like an elemental base barbarian.
I'll grab this one. Yeah, so it's from Xanathar's Guide to Everything.
That's a book.
So typical barbarians harbor a fury that dwells in them. Barbarians who follow the path of the Storm Herald learn instead to transform their rage into a mantle of primal magic that swirls around them. When in a fury, a barbarian of this path taps into nature to create powerful magical effects. They're the ones who train alongside druids, rangers, and others sworn to protect the natural realm. Other Storm Heralds own their craft in elite lodges founded in regions racked by storms, in the frozen reaches of the world's end, or deep in the hottest deserts. So you get a storm aura. So the desert aura, when this effect is activated, creatures in your aura take 2 fire damage each. The damage increases when you reach a certain level in this class, increasing to 3 at 5th, 4 at 10th, and 5 at 15th, and 6 at 20th. See, when your effect is activated, you can choose one other creature you can see in your aura. The target must make a dex saving throw. The target takes 1d6 lightning damage on a failed save, or half as much damage on a successful one. And then that goes up when you hit specific levels. And then Tundra, when this effect is activated, each creature of your choice in your aura gains 2 temporary hit points, as icy spirits ensure inure to its suffering. And then the temporary hit points increase. Like, you have a lot of flavor when it comes to the Storm Soul, but it gives you like a storm aura that affects people. Sometimes in good ways, sometimes in bad ways.
It all depends on what you want to do with it.
Yeah.
It's definitely a fun class to play. I personally wouldn't recommend it for a newer player.
Yeah. I would probably say Totem Barbarian is going to be your best bet. If not Bear, then Wolf.
Plus you're already above Bear, so...
Yeah, when you were saying that, I was like, I guess Bear just makes sense. Even bigger meatball.
Yeah. Plus that'll be... Since you're really the only tank in the group, that's going to come in handy. But as the more you play, the more you learn and feel comfortable. Okay. So, without further ado, I believe that brings us to the end of the show today. If anyone has any final remarks...
Play Barbarians. Play more Barbarians. Play an all-Barbarian party. Barbarians rock.
I want to play a full party of Barbarians.
Barbarian. Even better.
And then we're just like a heavy metal band.
Oh, beautiful.
Something I want to do, but... It's a good one-shot idea. Okay. So thank you everyone that came out. Once again, this is a school project for us, so we do appreciate any support. All the interaction in chat, we love to see, because like we pull stuff from chat. Once again, on Fridays we do our talk show / Q&A, where you can literally ask us anything about the game. If you want, you can ask us about the campaign, opinions, and whatnot.
All
Like,
that fun stuff.
probably next week we might do... We'll either do supports, because they're what's next in the book after Barbarian. Literally all three are right in a row there. Or we'll do the dex-based classes. And we'll talk to Zach and Andre about it. I do want to have a Lore Master episode on being a DM, and especially being a first-time DM. And even more so, like, your first experience playing is being a Dungeon Master. And that happens a lot. Matt says we get an A-. He missed the first part because of work. He's looking forward to watching Sunday.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
So, Sundays is our campaign day. This is where we run our... Matt also says do rogues next week. So yeah, we can do our dex classes next week.
Sounds good to me.
So Sundays at 8 p.m. EST, we do our campaign, where we dedicate it to some of the simpler things D&D, getting players like Evan, Zach, and Andre more familiar with the game, and overall just a good time. COVID's been tough because I haven't been able to run D&D for a while, and it's been really eating at me, so this is a really good outlet. And I just gotta have fun with it, so I like it. So unless we have any final remarks, we'll end it off there.
Thanks everybody for coming. I appreciate it.
I got pizza calling my name.
Hell yeah.
I got water and Tylenol calling my name.
Okay.
I mean,
So thank you everyone that came out. We do appreciate it. We'll hopefully see you guys Sunday for episode 2 of The Living Mountain. Take care everyone.
bye-bye.